The two people I trusted most destroyed my marriage in one night. My husband, my best friend. They thought I would fall apart. They thought I would cry, beg, scream, maybe throw things, maybe plead for explanations. Instead, I made a decision that changed everything. And by the time they realized what I had done, it was already too late. My name is Claire. I am 34 years old. I live in a quiet neighborhood outside of Nashville, Tennessee, the kind of street where porches have rocking chairs and neighbors wave from their driveways and everything, from the outside, looks exactly like it should. For 7 years, I believed I had the life I was supposed to want. A beautiful home, a successful husband, a best friend who had been by my side since college, date nights on Fridays, brunch on Sundays, a golden retriever named Biscuit who slept at the foot of our bed. I had built something that looked from every possible angle like happiness. And then, in the space of one single evening, I discovered that the two people at the center of that life had been quietly, deliberately, and systematically dismantling it behind my back. This is not a story about falling apart. This is a story about what happens when a woman who has spent years being gentle finally decides to be strategic. Before I go any further, pause for just a second and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. I want to know who's in this with me tonight, because what I'm about to tell you, I've never said out loud in full, not like this. I met Marcus at 24. He was charming in that particular way that takes you a while to understand. Not loud about it, not showy. He was the kind of charming that operated through attention. He made you feel, when he looked at you, like you were the only thing in the room worth looking at. I fell for it completely and without apology. We dated for 2 years, got engaged on a hiking trail in the Smoky Mountains. He'd hidden the ring in the top pocket of his backpack, and when I reached in for the trail mix, there it was. I cried. He laughed. We were, I believed, exactly the story I had always wanted to be part of. We married when I was 27, and Jess, my best friend Jessica, was my maid of honor. Jess and I had been inseparable since our freshman year of college. She was the kind of friend who showed up at your door at midnight when you texted her that you were having a bad night, the kind who remembered the anniversary of your mother's surgery and sent flowers without being asked. She was funny and irreverent and fiercely loyal, or so I believed. In the early years, the marriage was good. Marcus worked in corporate sales, traveled occasionally, made good money. I worked as a graphic designer, freelance mostly, which gave me flexibility. We weren't perfect, but we were solid, or that's what I told myself. Looking back, I can trace the exact moment the cracks began. Year 4, Marcus got a big promotion. More travel, more late nights, more distance. I told myself it was the job. I told myself that all marriages go through stretches of disconnection. I poured myself into my work, into the house, into the friendship with Jess, who by that point was a constant presence in our lives. Dinners at our place, weekends away with the three of us, a standing Thursday girls' night that Marcus always cheerfully encouraged. Now I understand why he was so cheerful about it. Now I understand that when your husband enthusiastically encourages your friendship with another woman, sometimes the reason has nothing to do with generosity. The signs, when I look back, were written clearly. I just didn't know what alphabet I was reading. Jess started canceling our Thursday nights, small excuses at first, and work stress, a headache, a family thing. I didn't push. I respected her space. That's what you do with people you trust. Marcus started sleeping with his phone face down on the nightstand. I noticed but didn't comment. People are allowed their privacy, that's what I told myself. There was one evening, about 8 months before everything collapsed, when I came home early from a client meeting that had been cancelled. The house was quiet. Marcus's car was in the driveway, which surprised me because he told me he'd be in Knoxville until evening. I walked in, called his name. He came out of the kitchen, slightly flushed, said he'd come home early because the meetings had wrapped up. Said he'd been about to text me. Something registered in my body before my brain caught up. A tightness, an instinct. Something in the air of my own house that felt fractionally, inexplicably wrong. I didn't act on it. I made dinner. I let it go. I have replayed that evening 1,000 times. About 2 months after that, I borrowed Marcus's laptop to send a file. Mine was updating. He was in the shower. I opened it, pulled up the browser, and there it was, sitting open in a tab he hadn't closed. A message thread. I didn't need to read more than 4 lines. Jess's name was at the top. Here is what I want you to understand about the moment you discover a betrayal of that magnitude. People assume you fall apart immediately, that shock takes over, that you crumble, that something cinematic happens, plates thrown, doors slammed, a confrontation right then and there. And that is not what happened to me. What happened was a kind of extraordinary, terrifying stillness. I read what I needed to read. I closed the laptop. I placed it back on the desk at exactly the angle I'd found it. I went to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and stood at the counter while Marcus's shower ran in the background. And in that stillness, something shifted in me permanently. I did not cry. I did not shake. I thought about the joint bank account. I thought about the house, whose name was on the deed. I thought about my freelance income, which I had always kept partially separate out of an instinct I had never been able to fully explain. I thought about the retirement account Marcus managed for both of us. I thought about the legal definition of marital assets in the state of Tennessee. I thought about Jess, about her apartment, her job, her social circle, the fact that most of our mutual friends were people I had introduced her to. I thought about every resource I had and every resource I might need. And then Marcus walked out of the bathroom in a towel, smiled at me, kissed me on the cheek, and asked what I wanted for dinner. "Surprise me," I said. I smiled back. And that was the beginning. I want to be honest with you about the next 3 months because I think they are the most important part of this story. I did not confront Marcus. I did not confront Jess. I did not change my behavior by a single visible degree. I went to Thursday dinners and smiled. I kissed my husband goodnight. I made coffee in the morning and asked about his meetings and laughed at his stories. And quietly, methodically, in the hours when he traveled and the house was mine, I built my exit with the precision of someone who understood that in situations like this, the person who moves first without preparation loses everything. I hired an attorney for Nashville in a neighboring county, paid in cash from a personal account I had quietly opened. I documented everything I needed. I made copies of financial records, tax returns, account statements. I had the house independently appraised. I consulted with my attorney about what a divorce settlement looked like in Tennessee for a marriage of our length. For our asset profile, I restructured my freelance business. I had always operated as a sole proprietor. I quietly incorporated, which both protected my future income as a business asset and positioned my earning capacity differently on paper. My attorney knew exactly why. I also, gently and without drama, began rebuilding my social foundation. Coffee with old college friends I drifted from. Dinner with my cousin Emily, who is a licensed therapist, who I told everything to in her kitchen one rainy Saturday, who gripped my hand across the table and said nothing for a long moment before asking, "What do you need from me?" "I need someone in my corner who isn't in their orbit," I said. She nodded once. "Then I'm here." I also documented the affair, not obsessively, not vindictively, strategically. My attorney had been clear about what was useful and what wasn't. I gathered what was relevant. And then, when everything was in place, the legal groundwork laid, the financial protection established, my support structure quiet and solid around me, I chose my moment. It was a Sunday evening. Jess was coming for dinner. Marcus had cooked. He was in a good mood, relaxed, the version of himself he performed for company. The table was set. The candles were lit. Biscuit was asleep in the corner. Everything looked exactly like it always had. Jess arrived with a bottle of wine and her customary hug. We sat down. Marcus poured the glasses, and I said very calmly over the first course, "I need to tell you both something." They looked at me with the polite attention of people who have no idea what's coming. "I've known for 3 months," I said. "I know everything, and I need you to understand that by the time you're driving home tonight, my attorney will have filed. The papers will be served tomorrow morning, Marcus, at the office." The silence that followed was one of the most complete silences I have ever experienced. Marcus's face went through 5 different expressions in 4 seconds. Jess set her wine glass down with a small, careful click. "Claire," she started. "Please don't," I said, not angrily, just firmly. "There's nothing you could say that I need to hear right now." I turned to Marcus. "The account access has been changed as of this morning. My attorney has a full financial disclosure. The house appraisal is complete. I'm going to ask you to stay somewhere else tonight."
"You've been planning this," he said. His voice had a strange quality to it, something between disbelief and a reluctant dawning respect.
Yes, I said simply. I have. For how long? Long enough. What followed was not a scene. It was not explosive, because I had removed all the conditions that make explosions possible, the surprise, the vulnerability, the desperation. I was not desperate. I was prepared, and there is nothing that diffuses someone else's ability to manipulate you quite like arriving at the confrontation already holding all the cards. Marcus left that night. The divorce proceedings were, by design, swift and favorable. Tennessee's asset division laws were on my side. My attorney was exceptional. The documentation I had gathered was relevant where it needed to be. Marcus contested one element of the settlement and backed down within 2 weeks when his own attorney apparently explained the position he was in. Within 5 months it was finalized. As for Jess, I said nothing publicly about her. I didn't have to. In a social circle as interconnected as ours, the truth moved on its own. Friends asked questions, answers surfaced. I watched from a quiet distance as Jess found herself increasingly uninvited from the spaces we had once shared. Not because I had campaigned against her, but because the people who loved me made their own decisions about loyalty. I did not celebrate that, but I did not mourn it either. The first month alone in that house was the strangest of my life. Not because it was painful, though it was in waves unexpectedly, at odd hours. It was strange because it was mine, fully, completely, unambiguously mine. No performance, no managed version of myself. No Tuesday morning smile over coffee for someone who had long stopped deserving it. Just me, and biscuit, and the Nashville evenings, and the absolute freedom of a life that had been stripped back to its foundations and was waiting to be rebuilt. I threw myself back into my work. The incorporated business began to grow in ways the freelance operation never had. Structure gives confidence, and confidence attracts clients. Within the first year post-divorce, my revenue had nearly doubled. I started seeing a therapist, not Emily, a professional, someone with no existing relationship to the situation. I wanted to understand not just what had happened, but how I had learned to perform happiness so convincingly that I had fooled even myself. That work, the the internal, unglamorous, necessary work, was the most valuable thing I did. I also learned, slowly, the difference between trust and assumption. I had not truly known Marcus and Jess. I had known the versions of them they had presented to me. Real trust, I learned, is something you build gradually, with evidence over time. It is not something you grant wholesale because someone is charming or familiar. I let that lesson reshape how I moved through the world. 2 years after that Sunday dinner, I was having coffee on my porch on a Saturday morning. The leaves were turning, the air had that particular October sharpness, and I realized I couldn't remember the last time I had thought about Marcus. Not with anger, not with grief, I just hadn't. He had become someone who had once been in my life, the way a city you used to live in becomes something you remember occasionally. Not with longing, just with the neutral acknowledgement that it shaped you before you moved on to somewhere better. Jess, I heard through the occasional mutual acquaintance, had moved away, started over somewhere. I genuinely hoped she figured herself out. That's not sarcasm, I mean it. Carrying what she did around is its own kind of prison, and I wasn't willing to waste another hour wishing her worse than that. I had better things to do with my energy. Here's what I want you to hear if you're watching this and you're in the middle of something that feels unsurvivable right now. The people who betray you are counting on your love for them being stronger than your love for yourself. The moment you flip that equation, the moment you decide that your dignity, your future, and your peace are not negotiable, everything changes. You don't have to scream, you don't have to beg, you don't have to perform grief for an audience that doesn't deserve the show. You just have to get quiet, get smart, and get moving. The best response to betrayal is not revenge. It's building something so undeniably, beautifully yours that the people who underestimated you have to live with the full weight of what they threw away. That's what I did. And every single morning when I unlock my own front door, sit in my own chair, and feel that October air on my own terms, I know it was worth every quiet, careful, deliberate step. If this story meant something to you, if it gave you something you needed today, please don't forget to subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. You never know who's sitting alone somewhere, trying to find the courage to get quiet and get moving. This one might just reach them at exactly the right moment,